Hey, hey, welcome back to Flawed and Happy. I'm glad you're here. Thanks you. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. So we are going to continue on into the Chris Watts series. Sorry, I took a little bit of a break. I kind of had to. I fell under the weather. It has been so long since I've been sick that I didn't even recognize the signs, but apparently I acquired a sinus infection somewhere. So I've been taking some medication. I'm not feeling 100% just yet, but I did feel well enough to be able to maybe do a video. So here I am and I am just not quite 100%. So, okay, the Chris Watts series. My next section, I was actually going to go in and start discussing just my own thoughts and my own personal feelings on the other woman. And you know what? I'm not 100% sure I even want to do that anymore. This case has been so incredibly heart wrenching for me, and there's just too many aspects of it that I can relate with on a personal level. And once I get to looking at this case, and I start to realize, what those are, it is really heartbreaking to me because I look at this case and these deaths were unnecessary. And I know everybody else sees that. I mean, nobody has a right to take somebody else's life, regardless. But there's four innocent lives that taken for what? And that's the hard part, looking at the details of the case, because I don't believe it was just one or two things that drove Chris to do what he did. I believe it was a culmination of things that all led up, and he reached a boiling point. But that didn't give him the right to take the life of his wife and his kids. No. I mean, the man could have very easily just walked out on her. You know what? People walk out on other people every day. It happens daily in this nation. He could have just walked out. When she was in North Carolina, he could have just went ahead and moved on with his life, and she could have came home to an empty house. And as heartbreaking as that would have been in the long run, the way it turned out, it would have been much easier for everybody. So I don't know. I look at all the details, and I think one of the big key things though that played probably a pretty good significant role in it is the relationship of his parents with her. Um, I can remember during my first marriage, the first 5 years that I was with my ex-husband, my mother-in-law despised me, and I know I already talked about this, but you guys, I seriously can probably imagine how that made Shanann feel. My ex-husband and I, we still tried to do our own thing to the best of our ability and just be our own family unit. And that's not always easy to do when, especially for my ex-husband, when he was caught in the middle of his mother and me. And it did put a huge stress on us, and eventually it drove me away. I mean, it did. It came down to me leaving because of the way I was being treated. So, yeah, and eventually, 3 months later, we did get back together. And that is the sad part when I look at this case with the Wattses and Shanann, is because I know firsthand that that type of behavior is repairable. Because my ex mother in law and I today are friends. And what brought us together and gave us the ability to be able to just put our own personal feelings for each other off to the side is that we were doing it for the family. And she had something incredibly heart wrenching happen to her personally. Um, when I was preparing to leave my ex husband once and for all, I did leave. I moved out, and just a few months later, I actually had a brother in law commit suicide. So that took me back to my ex in law's house, and I spent a week there. Did the whole funeral and everything together as a family, and I had to really sit back and think long and hard about whether or not that situation was going to be bringing us all back together, or I had a decision to make, and it was a hard, tough decision. And you guys all, I'm sure, know how that turned out, because I'm on my second marriage, and I'm currently married, but not to my first husband. So I decided not to stay. But in spite of all of that, it brought us all together, and it was from that point on that we really did um, give each other a chance from a personal standpoint, instead of just tolerating for family. And so I can about imagine what that was like for Shanann, in some of her text messages with her friends. She said she was more than willing to apologize to Chris's family. You know, it takes a lot to be able to own your side of the road in situations. And it takes even more when you're the only one doing it, when the other person doesn't even see what they're doing on their side of the road, because they're too busy blaming you for what's been done. And I've been there, done that myself, and I've also been the other end of the reciprocating line as well. I've been the one being the only one apologizing. So it it's a tough haul, and it is a tough road. And I know how hard that is firsthand. So when you start digging into the aspects of this case, and you see, and if I didn't approach this case from, well, I didn't in the beginning from an emotional aspect, but it very quickly turned to that, just because of the little bit of similarities that were there. And I'm sure everybody out there, with a heart and with a soul, can honestly find some similarities, you know. But I think the one thing that just kind of really catapulted all of us that have been engrossed in this case is the fact that it has been on social media the way it has been. And there's some people that don't talk about it. Like my husband right now, he still can't believe what Chris did. I mean it, but for him, he wants to be done with it. He doesn't want to talk about it no more. And I'm fine with that. I respect him for that. And to be honest with you, I am like that close to saying, it's a very unfortunate thing. I'm going to try really hard not to cry, because I look at this case and I see all the different aspects that where things could have been corrected, and Shanann and those kids could still be here. You look at the videos, you look at the documents, and you see they are just your typical American family living in a suburb, raising their family. You know, they're not the first couple to be living beyond their means, by no means. A good majority of America is living on debt. I mean, isn't that like the American way? You buy a house, you're in debt. Hospital bills, you're in debt. Credit cards, you're in debt. So it's a pretty typical family. And quite honestly, what happened to them, it could be any one of us. It could happen to any one of us. And that's the scary part. And what's even scarier, when I get to thinking about this other woman, and see, and this is why I'm not sure I even want to go there, because I get really angry. I get really angry at the audacity of that woman thinking that she had the right to go ahead and jump into bed with a married man. And then when everything did happen, she originally tried to lie about it, making it sound as though, they were close to a divorce being final. No, she knew. She knew the truth from the get go. That's the scary part. You know what? There's women out there like that. And she's proof of it. Look at that. And who knows? Somebody that we might know might be the next woman just like her, doing it to somebody we know or doing it to us. You know, human beings are funny creatures, aren't we? Um I try extremely hard to keep myself disciplined in life. I'm not going to say I succeed at everything. The title of my channel is Flawed and Happy. I am flawed, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Cuz for so many years in my life, I tried to live perfect. But it just got to be too much and too overbearing. And when I look at this other woman in in the Chris Watts case, she knew back in 2017 that Chris was a married man because she was researching his wife. It's in the documents, and that is not a typo. That is real. Now, if both of their stories do jive up and match, that they started talking to each other around June 1st, they didn't meet privately or one on one outside of work until towards the end of June. Um, by July 4th, and the morning of July 4th, it's like, why do they not know where they were at? Why are they both giving two different stories when something as innocent as setting up an app and eating at his house to him being at her house is like, what? You know what? People lie usually to cover their tracks. So what are they covering? Because at this point in the questioning, everybody knows they're having sex anyway. I'm pretty sure they had sex the 4th of July morning. According to them, they were having sex 4 or 5 times a day. So what else are they covering? The fact that is she just covering saying, trying to make it, I don't know. The whole thought of her being at another woman's house to begin with. You know what? And that's the scary part. Because I sure as the hell wouldn't want another woman in my house. Heck no. No, this is like our home is our one and only place where that is our sanctuary. That is where we can go at the end of the day. Our day is done. It's ours. We can feel 100% comfortable. We can be ourselves. That is our personal domain. And as a homeowner, we have the right to invite who we want into our personal space, right? So is she just lying because she knew she was invading that personal space and she knew she shouldn't have been? And more went on than just a simple app and chicken and carrots? And this is what I mean. I get too mad about it. I get too mad about it because, it's difficult to comprehend the aspects of this case to begin with, but to know, it was clarified for us in the February 18th prison confession. Chris himself said, I wished I would have never met her. Because he knows in his heart, had he never met her, his family would still be here. He even said himself, she played a very huge role. The relationship played a very huge role in what he did. A day late and a dollar short on that one, Chris. And believe me, there's thousands of people that wished you would have never met her. And the part that really makes me mad is she doesn't feel enough responsibility for her part, her side of the street, that she can't even come forward yet. She hasn't even come forth to either admit to the lies that she told, clarify parts of the story, maybe try to clear her name. Because there's still so many people that believe she's involved a little deeper and further than just an affair. You know, why would you not come forward? Why would you not feel a sense of responsibility to Mr. and Mrs. Watts for having an affair with his son? And look at where his son is at today and for the rest of his life. Why would you not feel a sense of responsibility to apologize to Shanann's family? You know, you were big enough to jump into bed with a married man. Where's your compassion for the families? Your sense of responsibility for your own actions? You know, I listened to those interviews that she did, and you hear an awful lot of me, me, me. You know, she was so worried about her name getting out there. If you're so worried about it, then you shouldn't have jumped into bed with a married man. I mean, those are just the chances you take. I mean, you in this day and age, you never know anymore. You know, she was so worried about finding a job. She was so worried about how she was going to go out in public. Look at how much this case is blown up. How do you think Mr. and Mrs. Watts feel? Having their family. I mean, look at I'm not sticking up for Mrs. Watts whatsoever, but you look at the type of character assassination that this woman is undergoing on social media. You know, we're catching just a glimpse of the stories because our documents are definitely not 8 years worth of information. It's a small little glimpse into the life and the lifestyle of two individuals that unfortunately um, were having some issues and was trying to figure them out, but the pressure just got to be too deep. And Chris chose to do some very unnecessary actions in his life to try to give himself some freedom from his financial obligation, from his obligation to his family, to his commitments and his own personal responsibilities, and use another woman as a deterrent from his reality in life, because that is all the other woman was. It wasn't love. It was that sense of freedom. It was that sense of escape. It was that excitement of something new. It had nothing to do with love. That's not what it was. And as a result, a beautiful family is taken away. But I'm not going to allow their deaths to be in vain. I believe there are certain aspects of this case that we can take and we can apply to our own lifestyle. We can help other people recognize what they're doing. You know what? I see every single day people on social media getting on social media and posting the most stupidest shit. You know, I that very first interview that Chris did, he was telling the detective that him and Shanann didn't worry about each other cheating. The detective had asked him if there was a possibility that Shanann maybe could have been cheating on him, and he said no, he didn't believe so, and he didn't believe he ever did. And I clearly remember that interviewer saying that's not realistic. Why isn't it? You know what? I'm living proof that it is realistic. This is what I mean by today we have social media, we have access to a device 24/7, and anything we want to see is on there. But it takes maturity and it takes discipline to not be the type of person that's going to take part in the BS that gets put out there. Every single day, you know, we can go to any social media platform and we can see just about any type of body size, clothed or unclothed, that we want. When them type of posts show up in my social media, because you know we can't control what other people post, I scroll by. I block pages wherever they're coming from because I don't want to be that type of person. You know, and it's not that I'm not human, because I am human. And because it takes discipline. to be able to be the type of person that is, I took those vows and I meant them. I meant to stand by my husband's side through thick and thin. And darn it, for the last 10 years, I have done just that. I vowed to be his only sexual partner. And if anybody is watching this that has the type of a lifestyle where you and your partner decided that you're going to live another way, so be it. I ain't here to judge. Whatever your agreement is in your relationship, then live up to it and stand by it. But don't lie, cheat, and deceive your significant other just so you can get something that you feel you need to have at that very second to have some type of an instant self gratification. That's not fair to them. And that's not fair to the Watts family and to Shanann's family. What Chris and the other woman did. It wasn't fair to nobody, but they did it. And what's done is done. The damage is done. And sometimes, unfortunately, there are no do-overs in life, and this is most definitely one of those times. You can't go back and take back anything that was said or done and bring those beautiful human beings back to life. But to the other woman, what you can do, you could come forward and you could clean up your side of the street. You could apologize to the families. And you could own what you did. Honestly. No more BS. There was a lot of lies that were told from the other woman. And when you get into those interviews and you start hearing her voice and you start listening to some of the things that she was saying, she was telling Chris how to eat. She says she was only trying to find him a place to live because that's what he wanted. Well, no, I honestly believe that that is what she wanted too. She wanted him to have his own place. You can't continue to carry on and try to go into a much deeper relationship. I mean, the woman was looking for wedding dresses, for God's sakes. There wasn't even a separation that had started. Divorce papers haven't even been started yet. And it's just like, holy smokes. Sorry, phone rang. When the phone rings, I gotta answer it. So, okay. But this is why I decided, why at least I'm thinking for the time being, that I'm just going to maybe just wrap up the Watts case simply with this video. And if I decide to say anything more about it, I can always make more videos and add to it. But honestly, I don't think I want to go into that whole aspect of the other woman just because, well, you can see how fired up it gets me. It really angers me because I respect human life and I respect people. And so it's extremely difficult for me to be able to, you know, sugarcoat anything for anybody. It's just difficult for me, and I'm sorry, but if you're going to be a big enough girl to jump into bed with a married man, then you best be a big enough girl to be able to stand up to those consequences when they come up. And I'm pretty sure these type of consequences just aren't your ordinary average consequences, but it's the way it turned out. It's what had happened, and there's got to be some ownership there. I honestly don't think anybody's going to give her a free pass, at all. It's easy for some people to just chalk it up as, affairs happen all the time. Well, not necessarily. Affairs don't always happen. I've been with my husband for 10 years. I haven't had an affair. They don't always happen. Could have I? Yeah, I could have. I sure could have if I wanted. More than once. With more than one person. It comes down to discipline. It comes down for respect. I don't want to be known as one of those women. I don't want, no. I can even remember it's just happened a few years ago. I honestly could not believe it. And I'm gonna get just kind of real personal here, but Facebook Live had just came out, and it hadn't been out for very long, and I had toyed around with it once or twice, and really didn't know how to use it. So the industry that my husband and I are in, another fellow in our industry, um, he had approached me when we're at a business dealing, and this guy approaches me and tells me the next time I am in the area where he lives is tells like I'm not joking. He tells me I should give him a call. I should give him a call and we could meet up, and I was like, "Oh, yeah. That'd be good. Yeah, I'll do that." And he mentions a motel. And I'm like, "A, a motel?" And I'm sitting there and I'm like, "Is this dude propositioning me?" And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, "Is he serious?" And he was like, "Well, I hope you're not offended. You're an extremely beautiful woman, and I'd love to have spend some time with you in a motel. I'd pay for it, of course. Just give me a heads up, and I'll get the motel room, and we can just meet there." And right away, the first thing I can think of was, and in all honesty, you know what? I was a little surprised. I was a little shocked, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, boy, do you got some kahunas. And right away I'm thinking about his wife because I've met her. And I'm thinking, how many other women has he done this to? I'm sure I wasn't the first for as comfortably as he could just, roll it all out there. And I'm like, "Are you serious?" And he was like, "Well, yeah. Oh, I hope you're not offended. I don't ever do this sort of thing." And I'm like, "Whatever." And I turned and I walked away from him, and to be honest with you, I don't go around him when I see him anywhere anymore. I just don't. I think he got the picture loud and clear. He definitely knows I don't want anything to do with him. He definitely knows I'm probably not ever gonna cheat on my husband. So, and I did tell my husband about it. I didn't tell him while we were still there because I think my husband would have he might have relocated a few things on his face had I done that. So I waited until we were halfway home because we had an hour drive home. And I waited, and yeah, and he was very upset. And I looked at my husband and I said, "You know what?" I said, "You know what I should do? I should call him up and tell him, yeah, I'll meet you. I'm gonna be near your town on such and such a day. And I should get there early and set up my camera to be on Facebook Live and already in there and already explaining to everybody what I'm doing and set him up and let everybody on Facebook Live see what type of man he is when he walks in and then proceeds to either try to do something or proposition or whatever I'm sure he didn't want to just visit. So that's what I mean by those types of people. They're out there. They come in the form of men, women, young, old. It doesn't matter, but they're there. And for whatever reason, something in their brain tells them that it's okay to go behind other people's backs and do something so incredibly deceptive. And then the thought of them being able to go home to their wife or to their husband, or in the other woman's case, just simply go back to her apartment like nothing happened. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't know how people can be like that. And honestly, I don't want to really know how people can be like that. I'm okay with knowing that them people out there exist, and I don't want to be one of those people. So for the time being, I'm thinking that I'm going to go ahead and call this for now, for sure, the end of the Chris Rock series. Just because at this point, I had originally intended to, get really creative with some of the videos, but actually I think I'm going to take that effort and that energy and I'm going to direct it into other things that I think could be really, hopefully, I'm hoping, beneficial to other people. The Chris Watts thing, this isn't everybody out there, so many people, I won't say everybody because that's a little exaggeration, but so many people out there have already talked about this, and to be honest with you, there's not anything I can add to it at all because there's so many other YouTube creators out there that did a fabulous job at getting the facts out there. And I just more or less wanted to just really talk to you from where my standpoint was. There's definitely a lot more I could say, and I could go into a lot more in depth details and give you guys a better understanding as to how else I could relate to this case. But at this point in time, I just kind of, I'm just to a point now where I think I need to just put it on the back burner and just give it a rest. I need to just walk away from it. And, I've said my piece as far as where Chris Watts is concerned, and I don't fully blame just one certain aspect. There's a lot of different things at play that went on. So many unanswered questions. Will we ever have the truth? Probably not. Do we ever want the whole truth? You know, for some people, for closure, they would love it. I guess for me, regardless of what more is said or what more is brought out, Shanann and those beautiful babies are gone. And they are gone forever. And there are two families in the state of North Carolina that are trying to put bits and pieces of their life back together and try to learn a new normal. How do you do that through such a tragedy? I don't know. I've definitely had my own fair share of tragedy in life, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And placing blame on Mrs. Watts, to me, she's got a long road ahead of her. She really does. And my heart really goes out to her because she's got a lot of owning up to do. And a lot of getting honest with herself, and when people start to get honest with themselves, one of the first things you start feeling is a lot of guilt and shame. And whether or not she started that journey of her life yet, but there's definitely an apology that is owed to Shanann's family and to Shanann. I mean, from what I can tell and from what I've seen so far, is she never gave Shanann a chance from the word go at all. Not at all. So whatever she was thinking up here in her head and whatever was going on in her mind, I mean, she just turned it into a fact, and that just became fact to her. Now, we don't necessarily know exactly what type of a relationship Chris and Shanann had. We got a glimpse into it, and Shanann definitely wore the pants in the family. I mean, that was perfectly clear. But I don't believe it made her a bad person, and I believed for quite some time that that type of a lifestyle worked for Chris. Now, at what point did Chris start to decide that it wasn't working anymore? I don't know. In his police interview, the first time he was interviewed, he said he started losing interest in his marriage a year before. But on his February 18th prison confession, he says he didn't even know his marriage was bad until the other woman came along. I mean, that says a lot to me. And it goes back. My next episodes were supposed to be on the other woman, and now here I go back to the other woman. What was she doing? yapping, yapping, yapping in his ear. What was he saying? What was she saying? What were all of those conversations? Because this is what she was doing. And if, and which is it? Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty black and white statement. I mean, you're way over here on this end of the spectrum. The in his first interview with the detective saying, I started losing interest in my marriage a year ago. But on February 18th, after he's been convicted of his family and he's been locked up enough time and he's had plenty enough time to talk or to think about what he did and what all happened that led him up to that. And now he's sitting there and he's saying, I didn't even know my marriage was bad until the other woman came along. That tells me that he finally was able to look at the reality of his marriage and realize that it was pretty typical. A young family raising kids, you got bills, you got some medical bills, the kids got some health issues, the wife has some health issues. There's a lot of pressure there. But it's not anything that you can't get through it. You can get through those things. You can, and that's what I'm saying. By this whole entire situation, it was just unnecessary. And I understand wanting to feel freedom. I believe me, I get it. I get it. Um, but there's certain ways you got to go about that. And the way they went about it, all wrong. All wrong. But like I said, there's no do-overs in life, and unfortunately, this one most definitely is not a do-over. So I'm gonna go ahead and for the time being, I'm gonna call the Chris Watts episodes a done deal at this point. I hope one day the other woman does the right thing. Um, I hope she goes public. I hope she gives those families an apology. I truly and wholeheartedly hope that Mrs. Watts and Mr. Watts find it in their heart to realize what their side of the street is, own it, make the proper apologies, and I hope that the Rushik family finds peace of mind somewhere along the way. I hope the gold nuggets that can possibly, if they can even grasp to see any type of gold nuggets yet, um, I hope they start jumping out at them because you know what? Quite honestly, when you go through something traumatic, um, it's a very long process going through it, and sometimes some things are just traumatic enough where it it never ends. You know, my heart goes out to everybody involved, literally everybody, and I want to thank you for tuning in to Flawed and Happy. If you haven't done so yet, will you please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can get the future upload videos. From this point on, I'm going to go ahead and start focusing on a few other things. I'll be putting those into playlists. And keep in mind now the title of the page is Flawed and Happy. So there is going to be quite a few instances where I will be talking about myself and some personal things that I've gone through, how I've gotten through them. And the whole point of this page is I'm hoping to bring light to where somebody may be feeling darkness. And that's what the world needs more of. And I don't believe I don't believe that anything in life is truly a mistake per se, as much as it is a learning experience. Unless you're setting out there to intentionally do harm and hurt others, um, anything that you've been through in life, it could be tough and it might be rough, but you can get through it. And it's it's certain parts of my life that I want to share with other people, because there's certain times of my life where I shouldn't even be here anymore. I shouldn't be here to talk about them, but I'm here. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to help, a individual, maybe a couple. So, all right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. And I guess I'll start working on a couple of the next episodes and the brand new playlist that I'll be creating. So, with that, thanks again for tuning in. I'm glad you're here.